Welcome to the compost cult. This is something I read in a book, and it just got my attention, and I absolutely love it because that was my case. Composting is relatively new to me. I've been doing backyard composting as well for many years, but never pay attention to the impact. And once I learned more about it, and I was like, why we're not doing this more and making more accessible? I just couldn't go. I used to do research on fisheries and never went back to fisheries. Compost is my life now. Is the Zoom, because I have your photos there so I can see people, is that blocking the screen? Because sometimes I've seen like it's black. Or can everybody see the screen completely, fully? Okay, excellent. All right, let's get started now. So I'm Viviana, originally from Colombia. I've been in St. John's for almost 14 years, came to Memorial University to do fisheries research, and then learned about zero waste and composting a few years ago. And again, it became my life. I started this organization, Planet Zero Waste Consulting, to help businesses, organizations to reduce waste. Initially was plastics, paper, organics, and then composting only. So now I call myself a community composter. I'm very happy to be part of this Lunch and Learn today. So we're gonna start with the land acknowledgement. So this is a picture of one of the sites that I'll be talking about today, downtown St. John's. So I'll just give you a few minutes to read this yourself, to reflect how you acknowledge land today and in the future. Okay, so we're gonna start with why small scale or community composting. So I use those two terms interchangeable. What is it exactly when we're talking about small scale composting? Then an overview of Georgestown and Aldershot, the two sites that I run with a lot of help with from volunteers here in St. John's. And then I'll finish with the brand new Newfoundland and Labrador Composting Co-op, which was incorporated a couple of weeks ago. So why a small scale? So when we're thinking about the place, the space, the infrastructure, it uses low cost, low risk infrastructure. And this comes especially when we're comparing to larger scale facilities, which are very common across the country, and that people usually talk about when they say such city, organics get picked up by the city. And we don't have that here. Both the province and the city of St. John's have done studies, but they come back with larger scale facilities, which are very costly, high tech, and just they don't want to get into it. By starting small, we can learn and then expand. Then it can also adapt to the needs of the community or neighborhood. Here, for instance, the two examples that I have that I'll talk about. It diverts taxpayers' money from waste management. This is especially true when municipalities get involved, which is one of my main goals for composting in a province. And when we're thinking about composting as a social enterprise, we can also say they create revenue, jobs, they provide a service that organizations get paid for, producing compost, etc. Empowers climate action. So probably people here are familiar, what happens when organics are in the landfill, creating methane, very powerful gas. And instead of that, when we are diverting and producing compost, is a way of how every household and individuals can engage in climate action. It's a very simple and powerful way to do it. Doing that engages and educates residents. Is also, when I think about this, I'm comparing to recyclables, for instance, plastic and paper. Like, people recycle, most, not everybody. And we hope that it's gonna get recycled. It goes somewhere, we don't know what happens with it. That's why a lot of people don't even recycle, because they don't even believe that things get recycled, but they end up in the landfill. With a small-scale composting, people can see where their organics are going and what's happening with them, and the beautiful transformation from their organics to compost. So it's an educational experience too. Increases accessibility. So province and municipalities have promoted backyard composting for many years. Many of us do it, but as soon as I started with the small-scale composting programs, I started learning about people who did it but didn't work, or they don't want to do it anymore, or they've never been able to do it because they don't have the space or the time or the energy. Because we say that, composting is a natural process, but it does require energy and time, and not everybody's willing to. So when we take composting to the next level, we're providing this infrastructure to people to bring their organics and forget about the process, we are increasing accessibility. The programs I'm going to talk about still have some barriers to accessibility, and that's next, with how I expect to grow small-scale composting and throughout the co-op. Elevates organics from being waste to be a community asset. So the same thing, when you're seeing what's happening with your organics and realizing the valuable resource that we're wasting, you understand the value. And finally, it teaches about our relationship with the planet and with the soil. So soil, I'm still learning. It's the tip of the iceberg. It's a universe in itself. And it's fascinating. Oops. Oh, what happened with the pictures? I don't see the pictures, but I had some really cool pictures of kids and adults learning about composting in Georgetown. I hope the photos in the I'm gonna ask. Can everybody see the pictures or just empty squares? Empty squares?
Yeah, they're just empty squares.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, so what is it? When we're talking about small-scale composting, so it's a place or a program created and maintained by local organizations, being government or non-government, that allows residents to compost their organics by recovering and processing them locally. So they're not going far away from their houses or neighborhoods or communities. And using the compost for soil enhancement and food production, closing the food loop. So here is downtown St. John's Harbor, the Rooms Museum. Georgetown started in 2021. It's in the green area of the condo, seniors condo, Kingsgate condominium. And a year later, we started in Aldershot, which is a community garden. There is also a community garden in Georgetown, but I don't have much connection with them, although they do use the compost. But I'm part of Aldershot, and we've been using the compost for the community garden as well. And I'll explain also what's happening with some of the compost that is collected, or organics that are collected in Georgetown. So here on the left is Georgetown. We have 3 tumblers. They're jerrycan beans tumblers, steel made, insulated, so they work well during mild winters. It's very, very cool. And then because they're tumblers, they're off the ground, they tackle one of the issues, which is rodents. And as long as you come in daily to check, there's no others. There's also the black bean here. It's also been there for many years before the green, and they haven't had any issue with pests or rodents. And so it's hard to explain why, because this is downtown full of rats and there's no rats in this site. The Georgetown serves about 26 households, 54 people about. They're mostly non-gardeners, so I have people who just want to divert their organics. They're not interested in getting any compost, they don't garden. And I get the help from 2 or 3 volunteers year-round. Here we're sifting. There's one of the volunteers right there. And here on the right is Aldershot. I'm gonna stop here for a second as well. You can see the pictures there? Okay, yeah, I see them too. So we have only one tumbler. It's a much smaller group, 10 households. They're mostly gardeners, although when I reached the capacity at Georgetown, I started bringing people to Aldershot because that bean was underutilized. And we have one volunteer, so it's one and myself year-round as well. Here you can see this is locked. So we lock all the compartments. All the bins have 2 compartments and has the like a foam that splits the 2. So we lock them all, and then people come and use the unlocked bin. So we call it the active bin. So what before we started for Georgetown, we went around the neighborhood, knock on doors, talk to people about the project. Some were interested, some weren't. But this is very important. Unless you know your people, and even if you know your people, it's always good that you share the project, that you share that you're gonna do this, because pests and especially rodents and others are universal negative perceptions. It can happen, but it's not the rule. And so, for instance, when we started Georgetown, even before we started collecting organics, we had someone complaining just because they saw the beans, and we had to shut down. And then we moved to the community garden. So it's always very important to consult, or at least let people know and hear their concerns for the long-term success of the program. We had flyers with how the program was going to work, how people could sign up. They email us back, so I know who's participating. And I could say that everyone who emailed me initially participated in the project, and no one outside that used the beans. And if they do a great job, because the main goal, knowing who's participating, is that you provide orientation, materials like a fridge magnet with what is accepted and what is not, and then emails, periodical emails. If you notice anything off, you know who you're gonna talk to. And this is another beauty of small-scale composting. Like, you're communicating with the small groups as opposed to the whole town, unless it's a very small community. But the larger the group, the more difficult it is to bring the message of, how important it is to have a clean material. And this is voluntary, of course, because there's no mandatory organic separation in St. John's, but then people tend to be really knowledgeable and they know what they're doing. As I said, each tumbler has 2 compartments, so all compartments are locked except the active one. So no one is there when people come to drop off their organics. They come anytime they want, but then just one. It's important that only one is receiving material, so you focus on that one, and then you lock it when it's full, and then you start curing, you start finalizing that material, finishing that material. Because once you lock it, it takes, I don't know, it depends, but a month to really finish, to everything disintegrates until you don't see any fresh material. And then it's important to see if you don't have to, but it helps. And having extra space to move the material from the bin to some other space to finish it, to cure it, it's important too. We only accept veggies, bread, tea, so like veggie material, plant material. No animal protein. like meat, bones, and dairy, or yard debris or pet waste. Maybe meat in the future, like meat, technically, like I have my tumbler in my backyard and I will add meat, but it's because it's a small amount. I chop it up so I know how it's gonna go. But when you're taking material from more households, you don't know how that's gonna go, but I would like to do it in the future. I don't know if that's a barrier, maybe for larger programs saying, I'm not gonna take meat. And then that means people need to separate veggies from meat. They might say, this is too much. I'm not gonna bother. But I don't know that. And the programs I've been supporting now in a couple of municipalities, when people get excited about composting, they go for it, and they will separate. But if we're thinking about making it mandatory and involving everyone, convenience becomes a really important piece of any program. As I said, people drop off. They have to walk or drive, depending where they live or how heavy is the bucket, how much, because some people will come once every month. So they have large amounts and they might walk or drive. I know some people are not part of the program because they have to do this. So it is definitely a barrier, the fact that people have to walk with them, with the organics. So pickup service would overcome this barrier. That's something I'm hoping in the future for Georgetown or some other program that I would like to start. Volunteers, we come daily to monitor the material's temperature and moisture. Temperature, it needs to be really hot when the fresh material is added. You add browns, or we add browns when needed, so people don't need to worry about that. We do that. And of course, keep the site clean. And again, people are really good. That's part of the orientation too. You tell people when they come, open the bin, be careful when they're dumping their organics so there's nothing on the ground. And, knock on wood, but I've never found any mess, or we've never found any mess around. The first years we had grants for Georgetown. They ran out, not possible to get grants for like day-to-day operations. So we started a pay what you can fee to keep it accessible, but then collect money for some of the materials and supplies. This is a very low budget program, but you still need money. And a couple of people dropped, and I know somebody, because I did some feedback surveys in the first year, ask this question before I implemented, and somebody said, well, this is like paying a tax, like paying tax, and I don't agree. Like, it should be free, and I agree. We're already paying for waste collection and then paying extra for this. It's not fair. Unfortunately, it's what we need to do right now. And again, that's why getting municipalities involved is very key. So this becomes part of the waste collection service, and people don't have to pay extra for it. But in St. John's, it's not possible yet. We'll see when that's going to happen. But for now, people agree to pay. There's a flexibility in how much they pay and how often. And they can also volunteer. So some of the volunteers who work, they are composters, and some are not, but some are. So over 200 volunteer hours in the last year. So that's amazing. And for Aldershot, the budget that we get for the garden covers the supplies for the composting program. This is a quick overview of what we've covered with grants, the pay when you can fee, and what has been in-kind contribution. Here in this reddish color, wood pellets, sawdust, some tools, materials for workshops that I've done in some events. Gravel salt for the winter are like the recurrent expenses, and it's still very, very low in a year. I can share this, or like I have my budget with where I bought all the supplies and how much for anyone interested in starting a program. Now you can see these pictures. This is what cool, because this is what I see with I did with the other slide. I don't know why it was empty, but anyway, so these are some of the volunteers who have supported both Georgetown and Aldershot over the years. This is my son, who says he doesn't like compost because I talk about composting all the time. Was like, but he knows, if you ask him, he'll know what compost and what is compostable or not. It's cute. Winter deserves its own section. And if you start a program, this is a decision you need to make not right away, because you might start, in the spring, summer, when the winter is coming, depending on how people are doing, how you are doing, leading and running the program, you will decide collectively what to do during the winter. And the winters have varied largely. Like the first winter, 2021, was very mild, almost no snow. The beans cooked, it was amazing. Middle of January, I was sifting outdoors. Then the second winter, we had a little bit of snow. I wasn't prepared. I had to shut down for a couple of weeks, only a couple of weeks. This is the other thing, like winter, really hard months, well, depending where you are. Because Labrador might be very different from St. John's, but here it's a couple of months. Well, the Avalon, because Central and West Coasts are very different too. But here, January, February, mid-March is like really, really. But if your beans are in an accessible site, and then like this picture show, this winter when we had tons of snow, people were shoveling, people helped. So despite that, we kept the program running during the winter. But the material didn't cook. It didn't freeze, which was amazing, but it didn't cook. So I found more cult members and people who were still in the winter. They were also running their programs. Here on the left, seniors from the condo using the beans. Like people use the beans during the winter. And again, with the pay what you can fee, I'll be able to cover next winter, snow blower or rent or pay somebody to do it. And here these three amazing pictures showing who received my organics during the winter, because I couldn't do anything with them. And also I knew that they were gonna be composted. So Phil Coates, Island Compost, he has a business outside St. John's, a farm, also works here with O'Brien's farm, and he did organics. I seed to spoon but with Sarah Crocker in Portugal Coast and Phillips, and Avalon Homesteading in CBS. So here, these are containers full of worms, and so the organics were feeding these worms. And from what they said, the worms were pretty happy. So that was a pretty good partnership that came during last winter. I wasn't expecting it, but these are the things that come up as you start your program, as you start figuring out what works for you. Always people willing to help, and just loving compost. Diversion. So for Georgetown, people report how much organics they drop, 17 out of 26 households. So that's pretty good. And we know that potentially with those 3 beans, because I don't track Aldershot, but these 3 beans are potentially diverting 2.8 tons of organics a year. So imagine what all these small programs together can do. So that's what also keeps me going, seeing how effective these programs are with low resources, but not meaning that it has to be like that. Again, we need serious resources for municipalities and the province, and that's one of my quests, to recognize small composting as a as part of our waste diversion or waste collection system. Some other towns at least on the island, I know, they started because the costs of transporting garbage or materials, including organics, from their communities to, Corner Brook or Norris Arm, it's way too costly. And because we know that organics are almost half of our garbage, it has a significant impact on cost reduction. So that's the motivation there. The financial motivation is there. I know municipalities and regional boards are discussing it, but they don't know how to start. And so that's what we want to do as well. We, the co-op, as I will explain shortly. So since I started these two programs, I always knew that I wanted to try the model, show that it was doable because I was seeing in other places, and then come to the city of St. John's and say, I'll help you replicate, because I didn't see myself running every program in the city, but again, with the help. They liked the project, they said it was good, but there were more questions / mental barriers that hasn't allowed us to move forward. They're really good people, and they're all good, sorry. I mean, interested in composting, but I don't know what we're missing, but we'll keep working on it. But all this to say that inspired by these programs and other programs in like Corner Brook by the Western Environment Center, we wanted to join forces, and for me was, okay, I have these two programs here, but I want to create something bigger, and knowing that others are interested in this and what the resources that we need to make it happen. So that's when the idea of the composting co-op came, thanks also to a friend, Kristen Murray, who's part of the Federation of Newfoundland and Labrador co-ops, who had already started working on co-ops. So in March 2023, we launched the Community Composting Network. As I said, inspired by composting programs in the province, funded by MMSB, municipalities, and nonprofits. Then the Federation of Co-ops launched the Co-op Incubator Program early this year, and we were selected for it. So it was a 6-month program involving training, co-op education, because there's a lot that we need to learn about how co-ops work, mentoring, peer support, and funding, and why we wanted a co-op in the first place, because it's a community-oriented business model. So it prioritizes local economies, collaboration, and allows for revenues to develop as a business, as a social enterprise, which is exactly what we want for small-scale composting in our province. So we incorporated. That meant that we submitted bylaws, business plan, forms. They were reviewed and said, you're good to go. So that happened a couple of weeks ago. And then this Friday is the graduation for the program. It's going to be live on Facebook. I'll share the link at the end of this presentation if you want to join. And then, what's next? So we'll continue planning and refining all the discussions and documents we developed during the incubator program, governance structure, how we're going to make decisions, who is going to make them, how we're going to operate, the membership drive. So memberships are open to any individual and organization passionate about and interested in shaping and advancing small-scale composting in their communities and the province as a whole. So any of you want to participate, get involved, and get community composting going, you can become a member. We wanted to make this open to anyone. Our vision is that the co-op will empower collective action, and that composting will become an organic part. That was an interesting word play game in our vision for every community. And then our mission is to be a resource platform for communities, for people to come together and explore grassroots solutions to organics management. And what type of resources? So we defined these 3 services or buckets, as we call it. So you want to start a small composting program, you come to us and you will help you with grants, site planning, engaging community, business plan, all the things that we learned through the co-op incubator program for the co-op, translated to sites and people across the province. Distributing compost, things like that. So that's site development. Compost literacy and education, whether you need education to bring composting and get people involved and getting their organics collected in their community, or you're part of a school and want to bring those materials to the school. So all the resources that we need to educate family, friends, neighbors, and politicians as well. Data and site assessment. So measuring, sharing, and advocating for operations' positive impact. So once you start your program, what impact is having. So similar to what I've been doing, the very least measuring organics diversion. I know these 3 bins divert almost 3 tons a year. So what else these composting programs can do in terms of jobs, environmental impact in general, climate change. So we need to measure that to show the impact and keep growing and engaging people and politicians, environmentally, socially, and financially. So those are the people. This picture on the left was early last year, and this was recent before incorporation. So stay tuned. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. Learn about composting, community composting. These are all our amazing supporters. Social Justice Co-op, Eat the City, which was a program with food personnel, which is how we started and got a chunk of money for Georgestown composting. MMSB, St. John's, the Federation of Co-ops with this amazing incubator program. Like if any of you also are thinking about co-ops and are not sure about where to start or what it means to have a co-op, the Federation is a great resource, and hopefully they will repeat. They will do the incubator program again. Kingsgate Condominium, they're hosting the beans, and they opened the doors in a critical moment where we didn't know what was going to happen with the program, with people complain even before we started collecting organics. And Aldershot Community Garden and the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which is where the other composting program runs. So join the cult. There's my email. And now I'm going to share the link to the newsletter. We don't have social media yet. But the newsletter right now, it's the best way for you to get any news on community composting and the co-op, how to become a member, how the services will develop. We also want to hear from people what the co-op can do for them, because that will vary, where you are and who you work with, what people you have to support you. And I also share the link if you're interested in attending the ceremony this Friday.
Thank you so much, Viviana. There's a couple of questions in the chat. One from Kim Penny. Where do you buy the tumblers? Where did you get the tumblers to? I guess that's referring to the ones that are the two different ones.
So we bought them from a company in Montreal, Juracan. But MMSB, the Multi-Material Stewardship Board, who funds all these waste diversion programs, they extended the backyard composting program. So before they will just go to municipalities and offer the black beans, now they offering also the tumblers in a larger vessel, not only to municipalities, but any community organization. So I should have or how can we distribute that? Because I don't know exactly where to find that, or maybe contacting MMSB, Julia Canning. She will tell you. Okay. Yeah, well, the thing with MMSB is they will subsidize the bins. Like you will pay just like $500. Well, because when I bought them, they were about $1,000 each plus shipping. So I would contact Julia Canning, maybe through Facebook as well, MMSB, and she'll give you the information how to sign up. There are the links for the newsletter, so sign up, and then you'll get all the news. Yeah, the co-op it's new. It's brand new. I'm super excited and scared because what it's gonna look like. But sign up for the newsletter, and yeah, tune in on Friday, and you'll learn more about the co-ops. There was another one for insurance for newcomers, car insurance for newcomers, and seniors' well-being, aging at home. Those are the 3 co-ops that were incorporated through this program. Mark?
Hi, thank you so much for that. It was great information. I was just wondering, you mentioned that the government did studies and basically deemed it not feasible to do composting here. What were the results of that? Because I come from Nova Scotia, so of course composting is very prevalent there, and it's obviously very beneficial. So I find it hard to believe that they wouldn't find it beneficial, especially with all the climate change, and emissions and such. So yeah, I'm just interested to know why that would be denied.
Costs. The startup cost is way too high. They talk about, so the provincial study is known as the Dillon report. You can Google it, and it's available. Yeah. And they talk about, yes, all the benefits long term, and then the waste management review in 2019, they say, this is where we find partnership with private contractors needed. And also they talk about buying for large scale facilities, because again, there have been other attempts to do smaller facilities for composting, but communities shut them down right away because they're afraid of pests and others. Wow. So yeah, there hasn't been much progress in that sense. And for the city of St. John's, it says that the compost is not good quality, and so there's no economic benefit. They couldn't sell the compost, and they said that other jurisdictions just give them away because it's not sellable. And so high startup costs plus no financial benefit in the long term is not attractive for governments. And again, something that comes up often is, or a small population. So, and with that, like I've been in Montreal, they're building this massive facility with all the technology to remove contamination and produce like really high quality, but that's something that is not viable here. And so when I learned about small scale composting, I definitely saw that as our option, that where groups can avail of all the benefits and social enterprise. We see composting as good for the planet, good for soil, food production, and so I think we need to take advantage of that as well financially for the benefits of the groups that are running those programs.
Are we the only province in Canada that doesn't have compost program?
Capital cities, I think so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there are different ways, different, yeah, scales, I should say.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't understand either. So now with the co-op, I'm hoping to go like full on and getting into the weeds of why. But like, you know, there are other examples of municipalities in Newfoundland. I know in Labrador, Makovic, they have a beautiful project that is connecting composting, food production, pollination, is how you say it, maybe not, like bees and insects and different things. It's amazing what they're doing up there. So like there are municipalities taking the lead, not waiting for the province to, and that's encouraging too. And so again, we hope that we will start bringing those resources to organizations, government or non-government, to start composting programs.
I think Fogo Island would be a great place. I know that they would be very interested in that, especially with the inn. And I did some work there for a couple of years ago, and the chef, you know, is very much into that. So if anybody has any connections there, that would certainly be an option to go to.
Cool, thank you. Yes, there are some conversations going, and there are many towns that have completed their climate inventory, and composting is always, you know, top list how to reduce your emissions. So that's where we will start. Like those who are already committed, but for whatever reason haven't started composting. Harbor Maine is another one that has in vessel working together to start all the education, public engagement part, and start collection next year. They have a large vessel, but it's still a small scale. Pauline is another municipality I'm working right now where the town, well, Harbor Maine does the idea too, both when working with municipalities, it's always the idea that they're going to collect organics as part of their municipal programs. And so people don't have to pay, it is accessible, and they are processing the compost and using it in different ways.
Awesome.
Corner Brook, again, with the Western Environment Center, they have a MOU, a memorandum of understanding with the city of Corner Brook. Yeah, there's another on the West Coast. Probably the first one a few years ago that implemented mandatory composting. People didn't like it, and now they do, because you know that's what happens. A lot of people will go against, but if municipalities don't take the lead and show that we have to do this, well, people won't do it. But there are good examples in the province already of how composting is being implemented. Thank you so much for the invitation and all of you for joining. And yes, please reach out anytime and stay tuned.